We all wear a mask. We actually wear multiple masks. And these psychological masks are called our personas. And all a persona is how we present ourselves to the world and how we want the world to see us. The term originates from the mask worn by ancient Greek actors, and you can visualize it if you've seen those laughing and sad kind of theater masks. And there's a few reasons that we wear masks, right? The first one is out of necessity, right? To interact with society at large, we have to put on some sort of social mask to be able to function in this world. There are parts of ourselves that we want the world to see, and there are parts of ourselves that we want to hide away from the world, right? That we don't want everyone to see. And a lot of the times we put these labels on ourselves, right? So for example, if you are a student in college, then you think of yourself as a student. You are going to act like a student. You're going to study. You're going to read. You're going to, learn and do tests. And you're going to listen to your professors. And another example, if you work in an office, you're a corporate worker, you're going to dress up, you're going to look the part, right? You're probably going to do your hair, you're going to wear a nice suit and tie, you're going to go into the office and be on time and listen to your boss. And you're just going to act the way that any corporate worker should act or feel like they should act. A good way to think about this is, think about the persona almost like a packaging of our ego, right? It's our ego's public relations person, and it's a necessary part of everyday functioning so that we're able to interact with the outside world. Initially, where the persona first originates is actually in childhood. It grows out of the need in childhood to adapt to the expectations of, authority figures such as our parents, teachers, peers, and that means that it's an early adaptation to transition into society at large. So the persona carries the positive traits of the personality, right, which are desirable to society. And what happens to the opposite side, right, the undesirable traits, is that forms a part of our unconscious mind called the shadow. So these are all the repressed negative traits, right, that you don't want to show the world or you are fearful of showing the world. A lot of the time, a overdeveloped persona is actually there to cover some sort of deep hidden shame or guilt. And I learned this from one of my mentors is the thing, right, the mask, the primary mask that we use to project out into the world usually comes from a place of lack. So the more that I want the world to see me in a certain way, the more I feel like I lack that thing in one or more areas of my life. And trouble comes when a person identifies too strongly with the persona, right? So for example, the person becomes the career that they're in, right? They become the job title, right? So a boss or a CEO becomes a CEO and they take that home and they, act like a CEO, act really bossy, around their, family, their relationships, or the people around them. So sometimes people fall into the trap of, identifying too strongly with a identity that is really not them. Right? It's what they think they probably should be or what they think society expects of them, but it's not their true selves. And when you think about social media, it actually gets really interesting because this is the first time in humanity where we're able to present our mask, right? The way that we want the world to see us, specifically on social media, and cultivate out the parts that we don't want the world to see. So when you see a lot of influencers showing off their Lamborghinis or flying in private jets, there's a good chance that there is some sort of lack or insecurity or, hidden shame in their lives. And when you get really good at pointing this out, you'll often find that the opposite of what sort of mask somebody portrays out into the world is their insecurity. And from there, you can typically figure out what somebody's biggest fear is just from looking at the way that they present themselves out to the world. And I'll drive this point home, right? I'm gonna be a little bit vulnerable. There was a point in my life where I wore a very heavy strength mask. Like I would go to the gym pretty much every single day. I'd work out for, 1 to 2 hours. And, this was a point in my life where I was actually in college. And looking back now, the reason that I did go to the gym as often as I did was because I was hiding my insecurity, right, of looking weak and also looking sort of stupid, right? I was not the best student in college. And the way that I made up for it was I told myself that I would be the biggest guy at the gym, right? I'd work out, I'd be stronger than all my peers. So that was the mask that I carried in my earlier years, was the desire to look strong, right? The desire not to be weak, the desire to hide my insecurities. And today I've traded that mask for a significance mask. And what that means is I want to stand out, right? My biggest fear, one of my biggest fears is, living a life that's not mine and, becoming like everybody else. And I feel very strongly about individual expression, right? It's one of the main reasons that I do this YouTube channel. And looking back as well, it was one of the reasons that I left my engineering job. And it was because I knew that I was meant to do something bigger. And I didn't want to go with the crowd and do what all my peers and friends were doing. And so I want you to think about what sort of mask that you yourself wear, right? Because we all wear masks. I wear a mask, my friends wear masks, my family wears masks, everyone in this world wears a mask. And sometimes you have to be brutally honest about what sort of mask that you wear, right? How you present yourself into the world. And it's not necessarily a bad thing either, right? Because everyone has one. But there is a spectrum, right, between a healthy versus unhealthy development of the persona. And really it's a balance between your persona, right, the way that the outside world sees you, and the ego, which you can think of as your consciousness, and the shadow, right? And the shadow is, again, the repressed parts of yourself that you don't want the world to see. To really become a balanced human being, you have to balance these three aspects of yourself. And if you look at specifically the shadow, the persona is the direct relationship opposite to that of the shadow, right? So that everything that you want the world to see you as, right, as the persona, as the mask that you wear, the opposite is true in the shadow of all the things that you want to hide, right? Of all the things that you're either shameful of or you don't want the world to see. And I can't stress how important it is to actually have an awareness of your shadow. And your shadow is a part of yourself that still wants to be expressed, right? Especially because it is repressed, right? Especially because we hide it away. And typically the way that it does this is it will project outwards, right? So you'll literally project your shadow onto somebody else. So whenever you see somebody, doing something or saying something that you don't like, there's a very, very high chance that that part is the part of your shadow that you are repressing. So again, anytime we see someone's mask, which is in the light, right, we automatically know what their associated fears and their insecurities are, right, their shadow. So it's literally the direct opposite. And again, if you get really good at reading people and seeing what their masks are, you can understand what their insecurities are as well. But in order to cultivate this level of awareness, firstly, you need to be aware of your own persona, right? And of course, you need to be aware of the opposite. You need to be aware of your own shadow as well. The most important thing to developing this self-awareness is firstly, being honest with yourself, right? This applies to everybody. There's no exceptions. And the simplest way to prove this is just observe the way that you act when you're all by yourself, right? When you're completely alone. And when you're with others, right? Maybe specific friend groups, maybe specific family members, maybe specific colleagues or coworkers, and just observe the way that your actions and the way that you act change. Also think about the way that you present yourself, right? So the clothing that you wear, the jewelry that you wear, how you do your hair, whether or not you put on makeup. What's the message that you want to send others about yourself? Because nothing is unintentional. Who do you want them to see you as, whether it's complete strangers or your best friends? And what happens when you develop a healthy relationship to your persona is first of all, you're able to read people a lot better. And secondly, you'll be able to become a social chameleon. So you'll be able to blend in and interact with different social situations in appropriate ways. And I just remembered a really great example that one of my mentors gave me. Think about the guy who cuts you off in traffic. He's got a huge truck. He's probably got, truck nuts under the truck in the back. He rolls down his window and you can see that he's a bold dude, like really big. He's got barbed wire tattoos right on his arm, and he drives past you and he flips you off. So what can we tell from, let's say, just this 5-second interaction? Well, the first thing is, obviously he wants to be seen in a certain way, right? He wants to be seen as this strong, masculine figure, and he's not afraid of being loud and aggressive. And in knowing that he has this very strong strength mask, what can we deduce about his insecurities? The first thing that comes to mind is, number one, he probably feels inadequate in some part of his life. In the past, as a child, he probably suffered some sort of emotional or physical abuse, and he felt out of control, right? He felt that his life was out of control. And one day, right, he looked into the mirror and he vowed to himself that I'm never gonna feel weak again, right? I never wanna feel this way again. And that's where the mask forms. And obviously, this is a hypothetical example, but if you think about some of the people in your lives and the way that they present themselves, chances are you can start to see the reasons behind why they are the way that they are. So I want you to take this information and really just start to look at the world and other people and even yourself in a different light. Think about what masks you carry around, right, and in what situations, and think about what masks other people wear as well. And I hope that this helps you develop more compassion for others, because instead of seeing them as they are, you can start to see underneath the mask and see what has made them the person that they are and why they do the things that they do. Hope that helps, and enjoy your day. Peace.